Imagine, like, just picture this, dedicating your whole life to knowledge. Whispering secrets to queens. Maybe even, get this, daring to speak with angels. That's John Dee. This guy, he was a 16th century figure so captivating that he's popping up everywhere. I mean, I've seen his name in everything from modern rap lyrics to, like, super intense scholarly debates. It's wild.
Yeah, he's one of those figures, where you're like, this is too incredible, this can't be real. But then, honestly, the deeper you dive into his story, the more fascinated you get. It's like falling down a rabbit hole.
You sent over so much stuff about Dee. I mean, we've got YouTube lectures, Wikipedia rabbit holes. You really went all out, honestly. And I thought I knew a thing or two about the Renaissance. This guy, he's a whole other level of enigma. Where do we even begin?
Well, before we get to all the whispers of,
Yeah.
sorcery and spying and all that, let's start with Dee and his element. Because early on in his career, John Dee wasn't some shadowy figure. He was actually like a super celebrated scholar.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking mathematics, astronomy, navigation. He even did stage magic, apparently.
Hold on, stage magic. That's not what I expect from someone who's going to advise Queen Elizabeth the Thirst.
Right. But it speaks to this, like, multifaceted mind he had,
Yeah.
this fascination with pushing the boundaries of what was known and how to communicate those ideas. In a way, you could almost say he was like I don't know, a Renaissance rock star, drawing crowds with this, like, knowledge and showmanship.
Okay, I kind of get that. And this intellectual prowess, it wasn't just like confined to those dusty libraries, right? I mean, we were talking about his idea for a national library. That was pretty audacious for the time.
It's mind-blowing when you think about the impact that could have had back then. If knowledge wasn't just for the elite, if it was accessible to everyone, I mean, can you imagine?
It would have been a game changer.
Totally. This wasn't just about, like, collecting scrolls and books. This was Dee wanting to democratize knowledge. He saw a future where England's power didn't just come from military might, it came from intellectual dominance,
Yeah.
Fueled by this thirst for learning shared by everyone.
But this thirst for knowledge, this drive to explore the unknown, it eventually led Dee down a much more, let's say, controversial path.
It did. Because Dee wasn't content just understanding the physical world. No, he yearned to unlock the secrets of the unseen, to explore the spiritual realm that was, beyond traditional science.
And this is where things get really interesting, right? Because now Queen Elizabeth I enters the picture, and she calls Dee her noble intelligencer, which basically screams espionage. What was he really doing in the Queen's court?
Well, first off, noble intelligencer was probably just, a fancy way of saying spy master. Remember, this was a crazy time. I mean, you had religious and political upheaval everywhere. England was this new Protestant nation, basically surrounded by Catholic powers. Information and the people who could get that information, they were super valuable.
It was a different world.
Totally. And one source even described Dee as Elizabeth's ubiquitous eyes. Just think about that for a second.
Wow, talk about pressure. To be the Queen's confidant, her secret weapon, in a world that's basically on the brink of war. No wonder Dee felt drawn to astrology and the occult. It's like he was trying to find any advantage, any edge he could get in this world full of shadows and conspiracies.
Right. And remember, it's the 16th century. The lines between science and magic and religion, they were so blurry back then. What we might see as superstition today, that was often considered like cutting-edge knowledge in Dee's time.
So while Dee's advising the Queen on matters of state, he's also diving headfirst into these esoteric practices, trying to communicate with, and I can't believe I'm saying this, angels.
Exactly. And it's this weird intersection of politics, scholarship, and the occult that makes John Dee so fascinating. But it's also what brings about his downfall. Dee's pursuit of, let's call it, forbidden knowledge, it attracted the wrong kind of attention, and it leads him down a really dangerous path, one filled with betrayal and ultimately tragedy.
And that's where Edward Kelly comes in, right? Dee's partner in all things mystical. And if our sources are right, he's a man shrouded in just as much mystery and controversy as Dee.
Kelly is definitely a pivotal figure in Dee's story. He was Dee's scryer, basically someone who claimed they could see visions, usually in crystals or mirrors. Dee believed that through Kelly, he could finally break through that veil, separating the material world from, well, the divine.
Okay, I have to admit, scrying, angels, crystals, this is where I have to be a bit skeptical. What exactly were they seeing and hearing in these seances? Was it just a shared delusion, or was there something more to it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to understand that, We need to go deeper into their partnership, into the world of Edward Kelly, and this language Dee believed could unlock the universe Enochian. We'll get into all of that, but first. So to really get Dee and Kelly, I mean, to understand what they were really after, we have to get into their world a little bit.
This is where it gets all like alchemy and Philosopher's Stone, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It wasn't just like fairy tale stuff back then. The Philosopher's Stone, this thing that could supposedly turn like any metal into gold and get this, even give you immortality, people were obsessed.
No way people actually believed that.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just a myth. It was like the ultimate quest. Kings, emperors, they were all throwing money at alchemists like Dee and Kelly, desperate for a piece of that power.
So imagine Dee and Kelly, right? They're in this world of secrets and crazy experiments, and Kelly's over here with his crystals talking about seeing visions, acting like a bridge to, wait for it, angels.
And not like those nice angels playing harps either, you know? Dee wrote about these beings in his diaries, crazy, powerful, beautiful, and terrifying at the same time. They were giving prophecies, warnings, even instructions on how to talk to other, I don't know what to call them, otherworldly beings.
This is where we get to the whole Enochian language thing. Dee thought he was getting a message from God, the language of angels, the key to, like, all of creation. But what's so fascinating about this language, I mean, it still gets scholars talking today. Why is that?
Because the Enochian language wasn't just some random gibberish Dee came up with in a trance. He wrote it all down, and it's got grammar, a whole alphabet with 21 letters. It's wild. Some scholars are even saying it's got similarities to ancient Hebrew and celestial symbolism.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. It's like finding a message from another dimension, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Wow. So whether or not it was real, Dee and Kelly tapped into something big, something beyond us, and their partnership, which was already, let's face it, kind of intense, it takes this whole other turn.
Things get even crazier, right?
Yeah.
Because now they're on the run from England, branded as heretics.
Well, because they wanted to talk to angels.
Basically. The church thought what they were doing was dangerous, so they had to flee.
And they end up seeking refuge with Emperor Rudolph II, who, if I remember correctly, was also really into alchemy.
Oh yeah, Rudolph was all about it. Imagine the stress Dee and Kelly were under. They've got the most powerful dude in Europe breathing down their necks, demanding gold, and probably immortality too. But they're also trying to decipher these crazy messages from angels, not even knowing if these beings are trying to help them or play with them.
Talk about a no-win situation. It sounds like all this pressure, this constant back and forth between the physical world and the spiritual, it really messed with them.
Totally. But in different ways, you know. Kelly, who was always a bit more, let's say, unpredictable, he got more and more fixated on the rewards. He wanted the gold, the power, the Philosopher's Stone, the whole 9 yards. Dee was different. He was all about the knowledge. He still believed in this universal language, this ultimate truth hidden somewhere in the universe.
So they weren't on the same page anymore.
Not even close. Their goals, their whole outlook on life, it all came crashing down. And then you've got this, well, let's just call it a shocking event that changes everything between them, the wife-swapping incident.
Okay, we got to talk about that. Dee wrote in his diaries that the angels, or whatever they were talking to, wanted them to swap wives.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's insane. This wasn't some fling or anything. This was serious stuff. It makes you wonder what was going through their heads.
It's crazy to even think about what would drive someone to do that.
It shows how much power they gave these entities. But honestly, after years of all that intense studying and occult stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if their mental states were, you know, a little fragile.
It's like they lost themselves in all of it.
A little bit, yeah. And the wife-swapping thing, that was basically the last straw. Kelly, he takes this as a sign, and he ditches Dee to go work for Rudolph II on his own. And get this, he tells Rudolph that he figured out the Philosopher's Stone.
Wait, are you serious? People actually bought that.
Kelly was a charmer and the promise of endless riches. People will believe anything. For a while, Kelly was living the dream: titles, money, the works. He had it all, thanks to a very gullible emperor.
But it couldn't last forever.
Nope. Whether Kelly actually stumbled onto something real or whether he was just really good at faking it, his luck ran out.
He couldn't deliver the goods, could he?
Nope. No mountains of gold, just a one-way ticket to prison. And to make the story even better, he died trying to escape.
Wow. Talk about a dramatic exit. What a way to go. But what about Dee? Where does he end up after all this?
So Kelly's story ends with a bang. But Dee's, it's kind of heartbreaking. He goes back to England, but he's not the same. And to make things worse, he finds his library, his pride and joy, totally trashed. Someone went through everything, scattered his life's work. Can you imagine?
Oh, that's awful. All those years of research just gone. What about Queen Elizabeth? I mean, he was her noble intelligencer. Didn't she look out for
Well,
him?
it's a sad story. The
Well,
queen, she was distant, you know. People had gotten to her, filled her head with all this sorcery and heresy stuff. Dee's reputation was ruined. He died poor, and for centuries, people debated his legacy, wondering if he was a genius or a madman.
it just goes to show that history can be really brutal, you know? I mean, here's this guy, brilliant mind, dedicates his life to learning and then gets punished for it. It makes you think twice about ambition and, I don't know, maybe that line between being a genius and, well, losing your mind, especially back then.
It really makes you realize that there are so many shades of gray in history, not just black and white.
Hmm.
Dee, he was a scholar, a spy, an advisor to the queen, and yeah, he was into the occult. We look back now and judge, but we have to remember the world he lived in.
Right, what seems crazy to us now was basically cutting-edge science back then. To try and unlock the universe's secrets, Dee combined math, astronomy with, well, stuff we might call paranormal now.
And it makes you wonder, right? If Dee was around today, what would we think of him? Would he be some kind of visionary, someone exploring consciousness or other dimensions? Or would we still call him a cook, messing around with the occult?
It really shows how much our own perceptions color how we see the past. Like, we love those Renaissance thinkers, but are we really ready to accept the ones who went beyond what was considered okay back then?
That's the thing about John Dee, you know. His story makes us question everything. What is knowledge? How far is too far? Where's the line between science and, well, magic?
We've only scratched the surface of this guy's life, but I think it's safe to say John Dee's story isn't over, not by a long shot.
Not even close.
Yeah.
There's still so much to uncover, you know. The Enochian language, his alchemy experiments. Dee left us with so many questions.
So, for everyone listening, where do we go from here? What should we take away from all this world of angels, court intrigue, and, let's be honest, some pretty out there stuff?
I think Dee's life, all the ups and downs, it's a reminder that knowledge is powerful.
Yeah.
But it can be dangerous, too. It can enlighten us, push us forward, but it can also lead us down some dark roads.
It's a warning, but it's also kind of inspiring. John Dee, he reminds us to never stop being curious, to never stop exploring, but to always be a little skeptical, stay humble, and maybe, just maybe, hold on to that sense of wonder.
Exactly. Because you never know, the most amazing discoveries might not be found in some textbook, but in those places where we have to use our imagination, in that space between what we think we know and what's still out there.
And on that note, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the life and times of John Dee, a man who truly walked between worlds. But like we said, the conversation doesn't end here. Go check out the stuff we talked about, explore the Enochian language for yourself, maybe even give scrying a try. You never know what you might find. Until next time, keep asking those questions, keep searching for those answers, and remember, the best stories, the truly incredible ones, are sometimes the ones history tries to keep hidden.